The meeting to order for the Halifax Board of Police Commissioners, April 3rd, 2023. Just to remind folks that this meeting, thank you for joining us, and this meeting is being live streamed. After the meeting ends, the videos will be uploaded to HRM's YouTube account and will be accessible to the public. This live stream webcast is a static live shot. PowerPoint presentations will be shared as part of the meeting's webcast. Take note that when presentations are shared, the picture of the meeting's webcast will appear in the lower right-hand corner of the screen, and this may obscure some text in the PowerPoint presentation. All PowerPoint presentations will be posted to halifax.ca tomorrow on the Board of Police Commissioners agenda page. Okay, I think we've got this a little bit out of order, but so I'm just going to do the land acknowledgement for our Mi'kmaq people. Halifax Regional Municipality is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people. The municipalities acknowledge the peace and friendship treaties signed in this territory and recognizes that we're all treaty people. I would like to just interject a small change to our agenda before we go any further. Because our agenda was done before the mass casualty report came out, I would like to just make a statement, not only on behalf of the board, but to any viewing public that are watching or will watch in the future, and to the families. So with your indulgence, I'd like to do that. So in April of 2020, in the first weeks of the COVID-19 pandemic, the most lethal mass shooting in Canadian civilian history unfolded. Over 13 terrible hours in Nova Scotia. A perpetrator shot and killed 22 people, one of whom was expecting a child. Many more people were harmed and affected across Canada, the United States, and beyond. Today, I'd like to take the time to acknowledge by naming those who were lost in this tragedy, and then ask if the members here and those who are with us here today follow that with a moment of silence, and then I'd like to add a few more remarks. So these are the souls that were lost on that tragic day. Tom Begley, Kristen Beaton, who was expecting a child. Greg and Jamie Blair Joy. Peter Bond. Lillian Campbell. Gina Goulette. Don and Frank Gullichin. Alana Jenkins. Sean McLeod. Lisa McCulley. Heather O'Brien. Jolene Oliver. Aaron Tuck. Emily Tuck. Constable Heidi Stevenson. E. Joanne Thomas. John Saul. Joey Weber. I ask you now just to take a moment with me. Thank you. On March 30th, 2023, the Mass Casualty Commission released its final report, Turning the Tide Together. That work is now complete, so there's nothing further for that commission to do. The Board of Police Commissioners, those of us who are here, received this report at the same time as all Canadians across the country. We now have a moral and a legislative duty to consider the findings of this report. On behalf of the fallen citizens who lost their lives that fateful day, the families who continue to mourn their lives, and the citizens of Nova Scotia who watched in horror as it unfolded, and Canadians who felt our pain. If you haven't already taken the time to read the executive summary, I encourage you to do so. even if it's just the pages that remember those who have been lost, reminding us through photos and personal content from those that love them, family members, that these are very real people that were lost. I want to take the time to thank the Honorable Michael McDonald, Commissioner, Chair Leanne J. Fitch, retired Police Chief MOM Commissioner Dr. Kim Stanton, all members of the families, communities, and subject experts, policing service personnel, and general public who gave of their time to assist in developing this document. We are all grateful that change will occur because of this tragedy and are grateful for bravery and commitment to understand the events of that day and contribute to learning from it in a way that brings strength from that loss. The Board of Police Commission received this briefing note, a briefing note that we received today from Bill Moore, Executive Director of the Halifax Public Safety Office for HRM, and it's been received by both HRM Council and the Board of Police Commissioners. We received that yesterday. At this point, I'd like to table that briefing note as an information item for the future discussion of the board in today's proceedings. I think to finalize this, this is a, I believe, a pivotal moment in Canadian history, and certainly in the work that we will do, of something extraordinarily awful and tragic and painful, an opportunity to turn this into something that can create new approaches to law enforcement, new approaches to community relations with law enforcement officers, new approaches to how communities work directly in collaboration with those who are in decision-making powers. So I ask you to take that very seriously. We're going to have an opportunity to have some conversation around this later today. But for now, I hope that if there's anything else you'd like to offer on your own behalf, I encourage you to do so. We have our next item of point is on community announcements. Does anyone have something they'd like to offer? Thank you. Commissioner Giles?
We've heard, excuse me, we've heard loud and clear from the commission members and through their report that there are a whole lot of things taking place within our society which are impacting our relationships with each other, our relationships with the authorities, and our relationships with police authorities. And I think it's important to bear in mind as we go through our exercise of analyzing this report, determining which portions, if not all portions, apply to us and to our work, to bear in mind that there's a big social piece out there that also needs to be addressed. We have poverty, we have homelessness, we have those who are in underhoused situations, we have women generally or often at least with children who are living within violent circumstances from which they have no ability to extricate themselves. So when we're looking at this report and the part that relates to policing and which relates to our work, we have to bear in mind that there are other things, social things, which were identified in the report, which feeds the nature of the relationships that we have with each other and with our authorities. And we have to keep those in mind as we discuss.
Thank you. Seeing no one else, I would now call for approval of the minutes of March 9th, 2023. Moved by Commissioner Blackburn, seconded by Commissioner Smith. All in favor? Those opposed? Motion carried. Approval of the order of business and approval of additions of deletions. Right now, we have an addition of 11.1, briefing note on the Mass Casualty Commission report, and 11.2, Canadian Association of Police Governance 2024 Annual Conference. And I would like to add as well 13.3, an in-camera item legal on a legal issue. And I'll need a seconder for that. Sorry, a motion, sorry.
A motion, yes.
A motion for that. Thank you. Commissioner Blackburn, second by Yemi Akindoju. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you. Is there any business arising out of the minutes? I don't see anything here, Madam Clerk.
No business.
Thank you. Calls for declaration of conflicts of interest. Consideration of deferred business. There is none. Consideration of correspondence, petitions, and delegations. We do have, no, we don't.
Sorry, Madam Clerk, Madam Chair. There's no correspondence or petitions received by the clerk's office for this, and Matt Stickland, who was scheduled to provide a presentation this evening, is not in attendance tonight.
Okay, thank you.
So do you wish to defer that presentation until I can contact him after the meeting?
Yes, we'll have a motion for deferral. Do we have?
Motion to defer until Mr. Stickland contacted.
Okay, thank you. A second? Seconded by Commissioner Smith. All in favor, say aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion's carried. Information items brought forward, there are none. We'll now take an opportunity to hear from our chiefs. So we'll start with you, Chief Superintendent Christie.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As I begin my comments this evening, I too would like to acknowledge being on traditional Mi'kmaq territory. And I too respectfully acknowledge the recent release of the Mass Casualty Commission report. I respectfully acknowledge the lives taken in Portapique, as noted, as noted by yourself. The RCMP Commissioner and Commanding Officer of Nova Scotia have also acknowledged the important and vital work done. The RCMP is committed to learn from, study, and address the important work and recommendations of the MCC. Informed by the work done, the RCMP will continue to engage and collaborate with our partners in policing, public safety, community services, and other areas such as the leading work done by this municipality in its public safety strategy. The RCMP will be open to and lean into the work done by the MCC with the goal of making communities safer where we live, where we work, and where we provide services. Before I turn to several areas that are traditional for my comments, if I may, I would like to make brief comments in respect to a discussion that happened at a recent budgetary process where I was in attendance last Thursday. During that budget adjustment meeting, I was either asked questions or made several comments. One was regarding the recent loss of police officers and the uncertain times that we live. One very gracious counselor noted that those police officer deaths were in fact difficult for the country and within the RCMP. However, they are widely spread, including since September of 2022, and most recently, Quebec Provincial Police Sergeant Maureen Bowe. You may see the chief and myself wearing our mourning ribbons underneath our vests are on display. Edmonton Police Services constables, OPP constables, RCMP constables, South Simcoe constables, York Regional constables, Toronto Police Constable. Simply said, we live in uncertain times, and it will take all of us to work through those uncertain times to provide community safety in new and innovative ways. One question that I was asked at the budget adjustment times was the trends with respect to mental health calls. I have provided Councillor Smith and some members of this committee with some of the ongoing analysis created by a civilian member within Halifax District. That analysis completed last evening shows that mental health demands continue to spike within the RCMP jurisdictional areas. That spike results in impact on policing continuing to be specific. And just as one simple analysis of that was the fact, if we looked in her analysis at the amount of days where RCMP were not engaged in mental health calls compared to 5 years ago, the amount of days have basically shrunk in 2022 to, I think, only 3 days where we're not responding to some type of mental health call in support of community safety. 7, sorry. compared to in 2018, 30 days. One area that I was asked questions on was response time. I advised that specific counselor that response times are a complicated methodology in terms of responding. It is my understanding that some indication of response times within the larger HRM may be within the PricewaterhouseCoopers report. However, for the RCMP to duplicate and make up a methodology that may not be equal to the methodology used or a methodology used by the Halifax Regional Police would simply confuse things and perhaps incorrectly cause unnecessary conversation. Response times are important. However, they are one determinant criteria among many that inform the discussion on police resourcing and methodologies. Lastly, Commissioner Harry Critchley asked me at the last meeting, police board meeting, about RCMP participation and metrics regarding an anti-racism online course, which I believe he saw public reporting. I believe, while not speaking for the commissioner, who I believe is not here now, but the commissioner pointed out that the RCMP reported rate in Nova Scotia was essentially some of the lowest levels in Canada. I'm pleased to share with the board today that of the Halifax RCMP percentage, we are around 85 to 90% complete of that anti-racism course. I am also pleased to say that the remaining 5 to 10% are probably in all likelihood specific to employees that are on different pat leaves or simply away from the office. So for all intents and purposes, we are close to being essentially fully compliant for Halifax RCMP employees, other than a few folks that may have technical difficulties signing online. I will now turn to several areas that I often make comments on, which is, in this case, outreach, operations, and financial. Outreach, I will just share, this is the beginning of month 5 for me, and I'm so very pleased to continue to join the team with the series of town halls that have been completed. I fully recognize for the board that transparency and engagement is really fundamental to police confidence. So while we've completed those 7 or 8 consultations, in fact, a specific one with some counselors in this room, that's not the end. That is simply the beginning. We will continue to look for opportunities to get out and participate, be it at counselor-held events or RCMP-sponsored events in the coming months. Having said that, not to duplicate the work of the PricewaterhouseCoopers vision and whatever the direction of the municipality is, it's still incumbent upon the RCMP to try and strive to meet the expectations of the 200,000 people that we provide more or less core policing to. Therefore, in June, we will enter into a planning conference, looking at the feedback, the police data, et cetera, and ask ourselves and those invited to how can we meet over the next 2 to 3 years, starting 2024, 2025, how can we meet the citizens and the expectations of our HRM to the best of our ability. Sometimes discussed in this group is budgeting. So the RCMP budget is more or less completed, and I'm not an expert, so I have an expert next to me in terms of Inspector O'Flynn. But I will simply note, again, some of the questions that I've faced are around the RCMP budgeting contract. And while that continues to be its own complex and interesting process, we ended the year approximately 105 to 106% spent. So while we do have overages, those overages do not flow back to the municipalities. They're assumed in terms of the provincial contract and other areas. Work continues, as I shared either the last meeting or the meeting before, on a $2 million sort of investment in 2 community offices, Musquodoboit and Middle Musquodoboit. When I have dates for the opening, official opening, I would be pleased to share them with the board, though I understand the Middle Musquodoboit office is all but operational and for all intents and purposes open to the public and fully usable. However, there are a few more procedural steps before we have an official open house. Human resourcing and the staffing of our commission officers are always of interest to this group. I'm pleased to say that your board chair has accepted an invitation to participate in the imminent hiring of the Lower Sackville officer. So the board chair, similar to what the former chair, Chair Smith, participated in when the chief's position was staffed, we're extending that same invitation, given the importance of transparency. Currently, there are three other inspector processes being run, and I'm pleased to share that Inspector Matt Turner, after a 3-year service in the district, is also posted west, where he will actually join Superintendent-to-be Michael Flynn. So we continue to ramp up with our executive officer staffing to make sure that as we hit the summertime, all 3 positions are being staffed. Some of you were aware, and I'm winding down, I'm aware that my time is sort of extending, but we just hosted an important 2-day developmental event in Oak Island. There were some important themes on that. I want to acknowledge several folks who attended, if I may. Erica Fleck, distinguished member of the Halifax Regional Municipality in terms of emergency management, presented on community safety. Sergeant Craig Smith, who's a member of the Order of Police Merit, presented on African Canadian reconciliation within Halifax District. Our guest speaker, Chief Superintendent retired Craig Gibson, also reflected during the dinner portion, and a special thanks to Chief Kinsella for attending, and the chair as well as the CAO, on diversity and inclusion in the journey that the RCMP continues to make. We had the special guest of Dr. Amy Siciliano, as well as Raven. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting Amy.
I'll wave to her for you.
Yes, sorry. Attend, and just a wonderful presentation on the potential of the mobilization teams and how that's integrating in RCMP areas, and the vibrancy of the public safety strategy. So that was a very well received presentation. We also discussed a number of different priorities, including everything from alerting to employee wellness to a whole spectrum of different issues. I'm very pleased, and the feedback from that event has been very positive. Operationally, there's a number of important things on the go, as you can appreciate, in the district. But I will simply note at sort of the highest level is we are participating in operational planning for September the 2nd, which is the 25th anniversary of Swissair, in terms of operations. No doubt while that will be informed, and we're not obviously the organizers of that event, we're the police providing core safety in the area. That will be, again, a remarkable day for Nova Scotia, given the importance of that. Subject to any questions, those will conclude my remarks, and I welcome any points you may wish to raise.
Any comments?
Thank you, Chair. So I know that it's so early related to the Mass Casualty Commission report, but where you sit, how do you envision that process will unfold? Because I know there's a review that has to happen with the report, because I'm assuming you haven't read all 3,000 pages since Thursday. Maybe you have, and good on you if you did. But just how do you, in very high level, top level, see Halifax attachment kind of doing the work, or will you wait what comes from national? I'm just kind of curious how you're going to digest that information and move forward with it.
Chair, through you to Councillor Smith. Thank you, Councillor. I think there's a number of layers to that question. So yes, I've downloaded two volumes, and I'm reading through those volumes. And I must again reiterate the quality and the vibrancy of that important work, and how important all RCMP managers will look at that report, irrespective of role. The RCMP nationally, as well as provincially, have stood up a number of dedicated people to look at each area. So while we have the report that's just been released, we also had a number of persons in situ during the Mass Casualty Committee hearings. So we had, for lack of a better word, been leaning ahead and forecasting a number of areas, which has led to the early adoption of a number of, I will say, of improvements, of lessons learned from the mass casualty, including alerting. So we'll look at each item in the mass casualty report, and try and determine, is it within the RCMP's jurisdiction, or is it within a partner's jurisdiction, and then try and determine on a case-by-case basis, what are the steps necessary. A lot of that work will be led by national folks or folks in Dartmouth in our provincial. But from the RCMP Halifax side, we're committed to working with our partners, including the Halifax Regional Police, including the board, including public safety strategy folks, the new executive director, Bill Moore. I think there are still important things that we can look at collectively and begin to work through collectively. I will say, I think, sort of at a holistic level, just as we're communicating on the Wortley report, just as we may be communicating at some point based on whatever the outcomes of the PricewaterhouseCoopers report, now there is probably of interest to the board, how do we also streamline the reporting and how we work at things. But the things that we can lean into, Councillor, we're very, very open and committed to.
Chair.
Commissioner Akindoju?
Thank you very much, Chair. And thank you very much, Chief. This will be a question for both yourself and Chief Dan, and I guess he's going to mention some of this. We've continued to hear and see and witness the continued gun violence in different parts of the world, especially in the US. And even here locally, dangerous weapons should I use at this time? Could be knife, could be gun. Normally, you would have given us a bit of report on where we are with that, or what are we doing to be proactive to avoid things, given the most recent of school incident that we just had recently. I think being proactive around this, and I think it was Commissioner Jives that said there's so many things changing socially. A lot of stores, I talk a lot about businesses are being robbed today and people are walking out. What are we doing? What can we do to support the community concerning all these dangerous things that we hear? Thank you.
I'll give the opportunity to my colleague, Chief Kinsella, regarding the Bedford school event that Yemi is referring to, and then I can jump in or not.
Chief?
So thanks, Commissioner, and through you, Chair, to the board. So we did have the incident in Bedford at CP Allen High School. I would say, and I will speak about it in my remarks, so I'm not going to go too much into it. A thankfully uncommon event currently within our schools, but certainly from my perspective, and I did comment on it at a recent press conference, where I got the question from the media, and the question was kind of specifically tailored to violence and threats and things that are happening in the schools in Halifax. And what I said then, and what I'll say now, is this is an educational problem really across the country. The police are part of that. We work very closely with our partners at the school board. We have community response officers, school liaison officers in the schools all the time. We can't be there every time, so we do have to prioritize and be realistic. So we are committed to that. We are cognizant, and we work in conjunction with our integrated criminal investigation division, where we have the RCMP and HRP working together. Our integrated guns and gangs unit, our integrated vice and drug unit. These units are regularly out on the road combating guns, drugs. They tend to go together, making regular arrests and regular seizures in that regard. In addition, we have a QRU, or Quick Response Unit, operating within the jurisdiction of Halifax. This is a dedicated group that are just about every night addressing threats in the community that are identified from a number of areas and information that comes in, and regularly removing those threats from the streets, whether they be physical threats, whether they be threats through guns, or even drugs, because people are combating over drugs. What can you do to help? What can the community do to help? I think really, if you see something, say something. If you see something happening, report it. If it's an emergency situation, it's 911. Don't let anything go unreported in regards to that suspicious activity, that kind of behavior anywhere within HRM or beyond. Call the local police. Report those matters, and we will respond. We will come together. We're sharing information regularly and trying our very best to combat the scourge that is the violence that we're seeing on the streets. And I will talk a little bit about shootings when I give my update and I have the opportunity. One shooting is one shooting too many, and we're committed to that, and we always will be. And I know Chief Superintendent Christie is committed to that, as well as all of our policing partners are across the province and beyond.
If I may add, Chair, to the Chief's comments, and through you, Chair, to Commissioner Akadoju. So at the highest level in the country, there's a group called the Canadian Intelligence Service Canada that looks at trends across the country, and they have sort of often provincial bureaus. So we have a Nova Scotia Criminal Intelligence Service, Nova Scotia, that looks at crime trends and information on any kind of violent activity and may sort of scale that up and provide bulletins. So there are experts in behind the scenes on the intelligence side, working with all sort of national and provincial partners that provide briefings to the chief and I and any other police partners. So that information often helps a larger targeting discussion about high-risk groups and where we should focus the scarce resources that we have from an enforcement side. Even right down to the fact that this Wednesday, and both agencies have crime analysts, there's the ComStat process this coming Wednesday, where in Halifax, RCMP and other folks from CID and other agencies, in fact, we're inviting the Canadian Forces Military Police Detachment to join in, where they look at all the targets that are meeting a threshold of providing, say, a risk to Halifax RCMP folks. So the name that many of you know, CM Surface, heads that program up. So monthly that group is meeting and sort of assigning work out to others in terms of who should be targeted and led. And then other teams, such as my colleague Chief Kinsella talked about the quick response teams. We call them the street crime enforcement teams, same kind of group and skill set. They go out and they often target a group A that's been identified sort of last month. What can this group target on? Here are the 3, 5, 7 police officers that will focus on that group and try and lead to either disrupt or provide enforcement. In terms of the school event that happened in Bedford, and I'll look at Inspector Flynn, but the following day we had, I'll say, echoes of those calls at 2 schools in Lower Sackville, where again, school staff called RCMP because they felt students were sort of had a knife or were uncooperative. So RCMP often, or police agencies, I'm not saying copycat, but the concern or the reporting, you can have multiple similar events. So we're engaged with partners too. Last comment that I would make to a theme that's arisen through all the conversation today is that safety, resiliency, community mobilization, working with youth, that's not just policing, that's a whole myriad of stakeholders. And that's sort of the win-win that I see in the innovation of HRM leading forward with this public strategy, being a thread that will sort of interwove and weave together sort of resiliency and prevention. So I think there's a number of things, from the enforcement, from the prevention, from the clients, from the follow-up, from the intelligence. All those things have to be spinning for your police and your agencies to be as responsive as possible. But we can always improve.
If I can, just because it's RCMP themed, I forgot to say at the beginning that while Commissioner Thomas gave regrets, I can tell you that I spoke to him today, and he was getting ready for his son's graduation from the Regina Depot. He will be, probably is by now, a fully fledged RCMP officer. So a very proud day for that family and our commissioner. So I just wanted to share that with you. Thank you. Chief Kinsella, you're on.
Thanks, Chair, and through you to the Commission. Good evening, everyone, members of the board, and everyone who's joining us virtually or in person here today. Last week, has been mentioned, I also had the opportunity to join members of the community, policing partners, and family members in Truro for the release of the Mass Casualty Commission Inquiry Report. After months of work by the Commission and everyone who was involved, the findings and the detailed recommendations provide an important framework to help strengthen policing and public safety, not only in Nova Scotia, but potentially across the country. The Halifax Regional Police is committed to doing our part for the implementation of the report, along with our policing partners. And last month, the policing community was once again struck with the terrible news of the line of duty deaths of police officers. We've heard this, but it's worth mentioning again. On March 27th, Sergeant Maureen Bro of the Quebec Provincial Police was killed while responding to an incident, and another officer was injured. What made it even more devastating was that it was the same day that the regimental funeral was being held for two Edmonton police officers, Constable Travis Jordan and Brett Ryan, who died in the line of duty on March 16th. Our members who were attending, and probably many others from across the country, were still in transit back to their home police services when that particularly gruesome murder occurred in Quebec. These incidents, deaths, and injuries are a grave reminder of the dangerous and selfless work that our officers do day in and day out. And on behalf of the Halifax Regional Police, we extend our deepest condolences to the families, friends, and colleagues of the fallen officers. As part of our commitment to employee engagement, our recognition board continues to meet regularly to allocate awards of merit and recognition to our members, as well as to those deserving citizens in our community. A wonderful example of a deserving citizen was a 14-year-old youth who showed great bravery when they stepped in to de-escalate an altercation that was happening between their peers earlier this year. I will not go into great detail at this time, but their actions during the altercation potentially saved the victim from suffering serious injuries. As well, this youth has mentioned that they hope to become a police officer. So it was extra special to attend in person and be able to talk to the young person and also provide them with a letter of recognition and some small tokens of appreciation from the HRP. Last week, on March 30th, the 2023 HRP cadets were sworn in for their on-the-job training, a very exciting day for all, a significant milestone in their journey to becoming police officers. After its successful completion, the cadets will be sworn in as police officers in July and provide much-needed capacity to the Halifax Regional Police. Also last week, on March 27th, we swore in 4 experienced police officers. They each bring a wealth of experience and skills from their time with other police agencies, and we congratulate them, we're happy to have them, and we look forward to their service. I would like to highlight a couple examples of some great police work that's occurred over the last month. On Monday, March 20th, as we've already discussed, and I gave a bit of a highlight, we had a serious incident occur at Charles P. Allen High School in Bedford. A school stabbing is a rare incident in our community, and understandably, it brought a high level of fear and concern to the broader community. The response to the incident was swift, and it spoke to the excellent work the officers, as well as many effective partnerships we have in place. Decisions were made so quickly and so swiftly. It was brought to a close very, very quickly. I'm quite proud of the members and everyone that contributed. Beyond the day of the incident, we continue to provide ongoing support to the school, and I recently had the privilege of meeting with staff. I can attest to the strength of the school community and everyone who is supporting one another, and I was incredibly proud of the positive words for our officers and the value the school community places on their support. In response to a number of St. Patrick's Day gatherings and parties, the majority of which took place in the neighborhoods around Dalhousie University, HRP made 5 arrests and issued 86 tickets for a variety of offenses, including public intoxication and illegal possession of alcohol. Unfortunately, these events occurred and caused disruption, yet again, in the neighborhood, despite repeated warnings and cautions to the community. And once again, it required a significant operational planning and deployment and preparation. Officers demonstrated significant patience and professionalism and a sustained effort to bring some order to the community over an extended period of time. Halifax Regional Police reminds everyone that there are consequences for such behavior and rule breaking. As I do each month with my update, I wanted to provide a summary of incidents related to gun violence and share our most current statistics. This year, overall, within the HRP jurisdiction, there have been 2 homicides related to firearms, 4 shooting incidents, and our officers continue to take guns off the street. And year to date, 60 firearms have been seized and safely secured within the HRP holdings. For our traffic update this month, in the month of March for motor vehicle violations, HRP issued 878 summary offense tickets, including 239 for driving without insurance, 157 for failing to display up-to-date plates, and 39 for distracted driving. 30 charges were laid for impaired operation of a motor vehicle, and 6 additional suspensions were issued in the month. And last month, we received 60 calls for service to report suspected impaired driving, and 45 investigations came out of those 60 calls. I would continue to encourage the community to call us. If you see a suspected impaired driver, please call us, we will respond. This month focuses on aggressive driving awareness, where HRP reminds motorists to travel at the posted speed limit and be mindful of other road users. In honor of Ramadan, on March 23rd, I was invited to attend a celebration at the Ummah Mosque and Community Center. As always, the gracious hospitality and community spirit of Ummah Mosque Imam Abdallah Yusri, Mr. Ahmed Hussein, and others helped bring many partners and community members together for a wonderful celebration. And the last I would like to mention is we look forward to celebrating our emergency response communicators during National Public Safety Telecommunications Week and our volunteers during National Volunteer Week. And I'd just like to pass along 2 incidents. They're both related to the same, but it speaks to evolution in response, which we're committed to and regularly looking at ways to improve. Through the course of the St. Patrick's Day weekend, there was 2 days back-to-back of excessive partying, most notably on the Saturday, but it did continue all day Friday and then most of the day Saturday and well into the night. And just a couple of good news stories I want to share with the board. And this is from a resident within the area, and they related to me. From our front porch, we were witness to effective steps and actions taken by officers on foot, bicycles, and in vehicles to shut things down early, before the opportunity for the situation to go sideways and spiral out of control. Thank you so very much for taking effective action. Thank you for being there. Your work and you are appreciated. That goes a long way for our members. It's a good feeling when we get and we're able to contribute to some quality of life issues and public safety issues. And the last piece I'll share, that one I just read to you was from an adult member of the community. This one that I'd like to share from a very young person within the community. So I received this card, and you can see there's the writing over here, there's a picture, and then a translation from the parent. So I didn't have to take time to decipher. Thank you for keeping our streets safe and home safe. So I just wanted to share that along. The men and women and our partners are out there every day doing excellent work, providing
That's
community safety, assisting with quality of life, and that is my update. Thank you.
Commissioner Blackburn.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And thank you for the update, Chief. I just had a quick question about whether or not you folks are seeing 3D printed weapons, whether that's something that's sort of darkened our doorstep or we're not quite there yet.
No, through you, Chair, to the commission. We are seeing them. I don't know whether Chief Superintendent Christie wants to comment. We're not seeing a proliferation of them, but they are out there. It is a real thing. We're aware of it. We have people that are working on it if they come to our attention. But certainly it is out there. It is in the area, and we're cognizant.
Thank you. Any further? Commissioner Giles.
Thank you, Chair. Chief, I think there are many around this table who recognize that I'm likely the oldest person, and that means, amongst other things, that I come from a different background. And I come from a background when it was not acceptable to so much as knock a police officer's hat off of her head or his head. Things aren't that way anymore. And although Chief Superintendent Christie's explanation about police work, which is based in intelligence, is intuitive, at least to me, I'm more concerned about the media reports of violence by young people, perhaps not necessarily within our community, some within our community, but violence being practiced by young people more generally. We have the atrocious story in Edmonton about a 16-year-old living with his parents in a 2-bedroom apartment and possessing a gun, which they say they didn't know anything about. That gun could only have been acquired illegally, and it was used, as we know, to murder 2 Edmonton police officers. We have a child at CP Allen, I say a child because I understand from the media reports that he was but 15, who confronts teachers and reacts by either slashing them or stabbing them. These are people and incidents which are not, and which really cannot be on anybody's radar screens from an intelligence perspective. And the big question is, what do we do about those? And how can they be ameliorated so that they are not problems for you and for Chief Superintendent Christie and for your forces? It's a really big question, and I get the sense that it doesn't have a very small answer. But what do we do about that? What do we do about young people who are resorting to violence, perhaps because they're being imbued by it by virtue of video games, the loss of the sense of the sanctity of life, perhaps, such as what I've seen in 4th and 5th world countries that I have visited for humanitarian work and experiences. And what do we do about parents who seem to be so detached from their children's lives that they don't see these propensities developing, or worse, see them but don't do anything about them? And of course, in the aftermath of Edmonton, we have a number of people who've been reporting through the media saying that nationally, between grades 7 and 12, 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 students is suffering from a diagnosable mental illness. I mean, those are pretty long odds, pretty tough odds, but it seems to me that we're going to have to come to grips with them.
Thanks, Commissioner, and through you, Chair, to the Commission. So I'm just going to highlight one little portion you said there because I think it resonates, and it should. It should resonate with all of us, and we should be mindful of it and remind people. For those, you mentioned parents, but it could be anyone. For those people that see something but don't do anything about it. Kind of goes to my comments earlier when I commented before my remarks about if you see something, say something. And I did mention in my remarks also that I went to the school and met with staff. There must have been 65 of them. It was quite a full room. And I will also say I don't have all the answers. I contribute where I can. I rely on partners for discussion, rely on the guidance and of the board and the community and all those kind of things. So I say that to say we're all in this together. And your question is well put. We are seeing trends, and that's why I answered the question I did in my presser in regards to the violence. We are certainly seeing violence on an upswing, not only in our schools, in our malls, in our public gathering spaces and things like that. And we should all be concerned about it, and we need to come together with a concerted effort on how do we respond. Either from a community safety perspective, from a law enforcement perspective, or some sort of combination in between. I think if you look at the mass casualty report and the recommendations, some of the areas that they broke it down to, I found it quite interesting. Violence, community, policing, I won't go on, but they're actually, when they come in the recommendations, they start with either the V, the C, or the P, or otherwise. And they've taken great thought to break them down that way. So I think there's some lessons certainly learned in there and how do we respond differently. But fundamentally, I would say, and this is just my opinion, I'm speaking on behalf of myself, a lot of these situations that end up developing somewhere down the road, they start with indicators. They start with threat cues. They start with messages from people who are projecting what might come down the road. I had almost a very similar question from the staff at CP Allen, and I answered in the same way. If you see these things developing, you need to bring it forward. If you note something or someone puts it on your radar, especially as a person in position of leadership, you need to bring it forward. We're in the schools very regularly. We're only a phone call away. Officers can be contacted right on their cell phones. They're prepared to have those conversations and they want to have those conversations. That may allow, There's never any exact answer. And I can tell you that anyone that's involved in policing or has been, very difficult to predict a homicide. And that's a very serious statement, but that is sometimes the fact. And I think we have to be real when we approach it. And what we need people to do is get engaged, whether you're a parent, a guardian, a teacher, a police officer, anyone. They need to get engaged. You need to be vigilant. You need to be watching. Not all the time, but if behaviors are there and indicators are there, you need to bring them forward. And I'll just share a quick example from our hate crime experience. And I know we've talked about it, but you asked the question and you've got me thinking. The major leading indicator, and this is my opinion, towards a hate crime is a hate incident. That's why we began capturing them last year, to make sure that we could track, we could monitor, we could see where potentially people may be going. They're indicators for the future. They're threat cues for the future. We all have an obligation to be aware and to come forward and get beyond bystanding, get to upstanding. And the young fella that I noted today earlier that I was able to give the presentation to for his intervention wasn't easy, saved potential injuries to a victim. He was an upstander. He was willing to step forward and make a difference. So that may not be the most concise answer, but that's what I would have to share, Commissioner, and through you, Chair. Thank you for the question, sir.
I offer this only because my perspective, though not unique, may be different than some others. Not only am I likely the oldest person at the table, if not the oldest person in the room, I'm the child of children of the Depression and the war, when the country demanded that people of 18 go off and fight, generally speaking, overseas. And that perhaps gave my parents a different perspective. But I can say this in all honesty. As a child, and although it would be very difficult for the people at this table in this room perhaps to believe it, I was no saint. And my worries about retribution for bad behavior from my teachers and from the police authorities, who I do have to say were summoned about me on more than one occasion, was far less concerning than the retribution that I knew I was going to get at home when I had to face the music. And I think a little bit more of that and a little bit less of video games and working part-time to afford the latest and greatest mobile telephone would be effort better spent socially than that which is being spent now.
Thank you, Commissioner. I, for one, will not challenge your being the oldest in the room, and I'd like to just present that I might be the youngest looking. So we'll leave it there. We'll move on. Actually, Amy, you are. Amy wins. Yeah. All right. So now we'll conclude that. Thank you both for your, Commissioner Christie. Or Chief. Chief.
Commissioner, Chair, Commissioner Kent, Chair Kent.
Favorite chair?
If I may, through you to Commissioner Giles. We run some data recently, again, as part of the analysis, and, subject for a broader discussion, perhaps downstream. In the Halifax sort of county areas, the crime severity, the violent crime severity index does seem to be ticking up a little bit. So, without putting a trend line on, high 2008, 9, 10, begin to dipping kind of the lowest probably around 2014, and then beginning to sort of trend up again. Numbers still below sort of 8, 9, but certainly seems to be around a bit of a rebound. So there may be some metrics around that talk around, and the discussion maybe for a different day, what the crime severity index is compared to the criminal calls for service, criminal case load per member, et cetera. But as an indicator, when that crime severity index goes up, that the seriousness of the crime in some ways is beginning to go up. Okay. So I think that's, again, to repeat myself, why some of the work being done by your partners in public safety are so important.
Thank you. All right, we'll move forward to 10.2. We're going to have some discussion I'll ask Josh Bates, our policy advisor, speak to the Wortley Report tracking document that he has been working on.
Thank you, Chair. So I just want to state at the outset that this document does not contain any updates on progress made on meeting recommendations. Updates are still being developed and collected, and I hope to have something to share with you very soon. So the purpose of this agenda item is to discuss the tracking document template only. And the document in the agenda package reflects the changes I've made thus far to that template. And I'll outline some of those changes now. So first, after the recommendation number, you'll see that I summarized each recommendation in a single sentence so that someone looking through the document can get a sense of what that recommendation is without reading the entire recommendation, which in some cases could be several paragraphs long. You'll notice as well that I made some visual changes. The version online now is a single table, and if you've looked at it recently, you'll see it's very small font. I have trouble reading it. The new version breaks out recommendations individually so that users can more easily see progress made on each recommendation. So you'll see that a green bubble indicates that a recommendation is complete, blue that it's ongoing, and yellow that it is pending. You'll also see in the latest version that was circulated to you a ribbon at the top that will indicate overall progress made in achieving recommendations, and below that there is a legend. I've also separated updates from the HRP and RCMP because in many instances they are working together in various ways to implement recommendations, but in others they may be working independently. For example, when it comes to screening new recruits, recommendation 4.1. And since circulating an early draft of this document to commissioners, I've also received some additional feedback, which I'll summarize. First, there was consensus to group recommendations into short, medium, and long-term recommendations. I think we can all acknowledge that the two police services have made considerable progress in meeting many of the recommendations. But grouping together recommendations this manner would allow the public to better able to contextualize progress made, especially on some of those longer term recommendations. Next, for recommendations that are ongoing, I heard that commissioners would like to see a targeted completion date, and for recommendations that are pending, a targeted start date. I look back at the original motion stemming from in September 2019 that the board requested a plan to address the Wortley Report recommendations. In that motion, an estimated timeline was one of the elements that the board had asked for. So this ask is consistent with that original request. And finally, as we receive the latest updates on progress made, it was pointed out that we may need additional categories in addition to the 3 we have now, since as of today, nearly all of the recommendations are in various states of in progress. So I've shared this feedback with both the RCMP and HRP, and there does appear to be agreement that a new format is needed to better reflect some of those staggered timelines I talked about, and to more clearly demonstrate progress made in recommendations where there are maybe multiple leads. So I'm continuing to think about how to, even further improve this tracking document. One idea is that we might benefit from kind of an interactive dashboard online that we could use to track progress, not only on the Wortley report, but also the defund or detask report, the police transformation report, and perhaps even some Mass Casualty Commission recommendations that pertain to this board. So with that, I welcome any additional comments that you might have. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Anyone have anything to offer? I will just say, take advantage of the opportunity to say thank you for working on this. Just so everyone is clear, I think that this particular tracking device right now is something that we hope will be a better tool for the board. We're engaging with our chiefs so that they have an understanding of what we're needing, what we'd like to have in the way of information to keep this track of this as well for the public. It's important, I think, to understand even that last piece, which is another opportunity ahead of us to really, we have a lot of things to track. And some of them are going to be intersectional. And so a potential request may come forward for some funding even to support a purchase of some form of a platform. If we need, if we get to that stage, which I would anticipate we should. We want something to be interactive and much more manageable than the way we are now, but this is that interim phase. And so as we go, this might come back. And if you come up with any ideas or suggestions, feel free to send it along to Josh and I so that we can consider something. And we want to make as well Josh's ability to do the work we need him to do more successful. So thank you for that. And if there's nothing else Commissioner Akindoju.
Thank you, Chair. And just to echo the Chair, thank you very, very much for making this more focused for people like me who would want to read the summary of almost everything. But more still, you mentioned the short, medium, and long-term strategy. I hope as you continue to work with our priorities, strategic priorities, the short part of this report will tie into our priorities as well. You had mentioned in the priority the whole report. I think we should take it in strides. So if we can look at the short term, which means priority, then we should tie it into our strategic priorities. So thank you.
Thank you. That's a great point. I could add that to that. It might be something worthwhile now. I mean, we still have some work to do on the strategic priorities, setting our goals, and but it might be worthwhile thinking about now putting something in that is a key performance indicator that says, and a lens that check this particular priority meets the priority that the board has set as strategic, right? And that kind of thing. So that would be great. Thank you for that offer. All right, good. Thank you all. We have an added item on a briefing note regarding the briefing note or a motion that is going to be put forward on the Mass Casualty Commission report. So we added the item, and is there someone who would like to speak to this? Originally, this was Commissioner Critchley's motion, but he couldn't stay. So Commissioner Smith?
Thank you. I'll put it on the floor for discussion that the chair of the Halifax Board of Police Commissioners request that the Chief Administrative Officer direct the policy advisor for the Halifax Board of Police Commissioners to prepare a briefing note on the final report of the Mass Casualty Commission, the MCC report published March 30th, 2023, outlining the major factual findings of the MCC report relevant to the board's statutory mandate, B, the recommendations of the MCC report that are within the board's statutory jurisdiction, either on its own or in tandem with other levels of government, i.e. municipal, provincial, federal, indigenous, and C, any other information from the MCC report that the policy advisor considers would be relevant to or helpful for the board in fulfilling its statutory duties and functions. I so move.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Blackburn. Thank you. So the motion is on the floor. Does anyone have any discussion on it? I would like to offer some, but Commissioner Blackburn?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. No, just a clarification more than anything. I know that we got the a briefing note already from the CAO's office, which was great. Thank you. Much, much appreciated. But I just want to just make clear that what we're asking for here is a more nuanced, we want sort of recommendations on board policy that we can sort of craft as a result of the information that's been brought forward during the mass casualty and in their report?
Well, we don't have the originator of this particular item with us to really speak to that. I don't see anyone else yeah, I just want to add something if I could for clarification, because that's
Sure.
kind of an opportunity for me to speak to this.
Okay.
So we did really, number one, we have some portions of it certainly within the briefing note that we were provided through HRM. And the relevant board statutory mandate piece is something, and A and B actually are both things that Josh and I have had some conversation around already in the past, knowing this report was coming out, that this would have to be part of his structured and priority focus, in tandem with the public safety strategy, the homelessness strategy, the defund report, the policing review, all of the layers. So this absolutely is, I think, something that should be done. The concern I have with it is C, and it's all relevant, great information, but we've just received it.
Yeah.
And we all need time to review and digest and absorb. Each of us bring different strengths to this table, and to when we read something, we're reading from our own perspective lens for the work that we want to do here. And I don't feel like we have really had an opportunity to do that.
For sure.
Any of us. And if you can tell me you read 3,000 pages, I want you to tell me what you heard, because it'd just make it easier for all of us. But I don't expect any of you did that. And nor would I expect that. What Josh, I know, has to do for us on our behalf is to, at the very beginning, be very clear about what we need him to bring back, like that question. And I'm not convinced that we've had enough time to actually create our own perspective to offer to him yet.
Gotcha.
From a public perspective, some of this is already, he knows this is part of the work he will do with or without this motion. I'm just a little concerned that we would get ahead of and maybe it should be asked for an information report, or if a briefing note is the same thing, it's the same thing. But to start, I think to start to gather this information, but to not expect it to be all inclusive yet. We'll be months. We'll all be months and months really considering all of the pieces of that report. And we should be, to have him get started on it without some clarity that comes from us actually finishing at least the executive summary consideration, I think is a little premature. So I, depending on what we hear from it, I'm still open to, of course, other commissioners' comments, but it might be more worthwhile for us to give him some direction. And this can just be within this debate of the commitment that we each can make around a timeline that says, at this point, we know that he needs to have very dedicated feedback from us about what we need him to pull out of it. So my thoughts. See, just 1 second. Commissioner Giles, do you want to go?
Commissioner, I can go to stand up.
Thank
Okay,
you.
go ahead, Commissioner.
So, thank you, first of all, for allowing us, for even suggesting that we need time. We all really need time to digest this. Thank you for the briefing note. But my ask is I would assume that based on a few things I've read, there are lots of stakeholders that will be responsible for breaking this down, not just the Board of Police Commissioners. It involves the province, it involves HRM, it involves the federal government, it involves the community, and it involves everybody. So therefore, relevance and jurisdiction will be the area of focus for us to be able to define in terms of what is our jurisdiction around this policy and what is relevant for us to be able to move forward. Or else it will be like so many things that we start and will not be able to end. I always look forward to a committee like this or a board to have a focus on what they need to do and how they need to get it done if the focus is well defined. So I'm talking about definition around relevance and jurisdiction. Thank you.
Thank you. Kathy?
Yes, I just wanted to suggest that, as this moves forward, I think that it's important that Josh is working with community safety and with the RCMP and with the HRP. It almost needs to be a working group of all those different players at the table to respond to this, particularly community safety, because under that new department, we have a lot of initiatives going on, for example, with respect to women's safety. So I think it's important that when the Board of Police Commissioners deals with this, that we're not doing it in a siloed approach.
Yeah. Commissioner Giles?
Thanks very much, and I'm going to take a different tack. I don't think we're discussing a siloed approach. We're talking about a high-level viewpoint of the reports from the perspective of our agenda, from the perspective of our responsibilities, and who better to do that but our policy guru, our policy operative. It's always a question of what comes first, the chicken or the egg. And the suggestion that we should all read the report, or most of the report, or almost all of the report,
Or the
You know,
executive report?
in order to gain a perspective on how we should instruct somebody who is trained on our behalf and for our purposes to provide policy directives, seems to me to be a bit strange. I think it would be really helpful to me, and perhaps I'm only recognizing what would be helpful to me, but it would be really helpful to me for somebody dedicated to the task to provide that high-level view so that I might then be able to better concentrate my own study. I like the motion. I don't think it's unnecessarily open-ended. If it's subject to a little bit of refinement, that can probably be done between you, Chair, and Mr. Bates. Doesn't necessarily have to be put off till a time when we've all read big chunks of the report, or perhaps all of the report. Because I do wager that many of us will never get around to do that.
And just from the perspective of what I was talking about is that I'm not suggesting that it not happen. It is already it already has been motioned forward. So I guess, yeah, so just so you know, that was part of a work plan for Josh.
Sorry, I think what I'm
Just
hearing.
one second, Lindell, did you have something to offer here? Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
I think what I'm hearing from Commissioner Giles, Gavin, is that we have a policy committee and they can drive purpose, relevance, and jurisdiction. And that will make it easier for Josh to work upon that. Am I right? Is that what I'm hearing? And I think that makes a lot of sense to me.
I'll just speak since the chair's checked. Commissioner Christie's not here, so I can't thank him. I'll thank him later. So just as Commissioner Giles mentioned, yeah, I think this really kind of gives a high level framework of tell us what the guru, Josh, I guess I'll be calling you that now, what you can pull out of the report that looks like it seems to be our mandate. And as mentioned, there might be pieces that you miss. And as we as board members go through it and we say, oh, actually, Josh, this one is also relevant to us. So I think this is a good step. And I look at it in two frameworks. It's getting here, getting a briefing note or whatever that ends up at the end. And then later on as a board, we discuss how we're going to move forward with whatever that might be. So just in general, reading high level the report and digging around a little bit, there's actually a fair amount that has impacts on us, which is pretty interesting. I knew that there would be impacts on us, but when I say us, I mean the board itself. So obviously our policing partners and whatnot, a lot in there. But for the board, like for just example, the recommendation P61 talks about training for board members, board attendance, like making policies around attendance, boards understanding governance and our roles, and even funding board activities and compensation for members. So, just looking at how that the report really went deep into digging into us as boards, police commissioners would usually get kind of forgotten about when all these discussions happen. I'm really happy to see that. So I know when you're going through this, Josh, you're going to pull out some really good stuff for us. Even the recommendation related to community safety strategy, and this is for Amy, you and your crew, and Bill, like we're going to be the ones looking at the mold, because we've done this since 2018. When did we start our first one? Yeah, 18. So we are going to be looked at through Atlantic Canada, even beyond, to help other folks create community safety strategies. So that's going to be a lot of work on your end, and how we support that is going to be interesting. So two questions I have. One is the resourcing aspect, and this could be CAO or Josh, because just going through this report is going to take a lot of your time, Josh. And as mentioned by the chair, you're already doing a lot of other things. So I'm just wondering, would this be the time where we would get somebody to maybe like go to Dow, say, hey, do you have an articling student in law who'd be interested in supporting? Or I don't know, I'm just making that up. Like, would this be one of those opportunities where we would reach out to a school and say, hey, we want to hire a student for the summer to help support this? Because it's going to take a lot of work. There's that, and the other pieces you can think about this for future, Josh, is a tracking sheet similar to the Wortley report. Like, should we also have something, understanding, as mentioned, this has a lot of interworkings, a lot of people who are involved, but should we be thinking about having something similar for the MCC report as well? Because I think it'd be helpful, but I know it's going to be difficult to kind of work around who's responsible, because it goes all the way from federal government down to us and community partners. So just those two thoughts of, should we think about creating a tracking sheet, or should we save that for phase 2 after the briefing note, in this resourcing to get that briefing note done?
Thank you. CAO?
First, on the resourcing, because council has recently allocated approximately $700,000 through the budget process to the Public Safety Office and the establishment of the Community Safety Department. I believe that we can resource this and support Josh, through community safety. And if we find that there's an incremental resource need through the year, if Josh identifies to us that there's a need for outside assistance or additional funding, then we'll deal with it at the time. The second thing on the tracking sheet, it's an excellent point you raise. I think we need a tracking sheet on the Wortley report, the Defunding the Police report, the police study when that comes forward, as well as the Mass Casualty Commission. And in addition to that, I know the clerk's office has come forward and compiled a list of items, motions from the Board of Police Commissioners since 2018 that we also could incorporate, anything that hasn't been addressed in one massive integrated tracking sheet that would be under the command and control of Josh.
I only wanted to point out here that in the motion here, there are certain legal aspects here. We're talking about, relevant to the board's statutory mandate. We're talking about the next one, the board's statutory jurisdiction. Those are legal questions, okay? I'm not suggesting that that the fact findings are, or that it's a total legal exercise, but basically I think setting the framework for some of this involves some legal consultation. So how we go about that, whether it's done through, through Josh working with me to some extent, I don't know. But I think, I just wanted to point that out, that I don't think we can expect Josh to jump in and provide, legal guidance on some of these things.
Commissioner Akindoju.
Thank you very much. I think this drives more importance than we probably would have set around it. And I would suggest, if possible, that we look into having an external solicitor to work on this particular project for us, to clearly identify what the role of this commission is in addressing the Mass report. They will be working in conjunction with our set policy group, if that makes sense at all. That would be my suggestion. And thereafter that, then the doing part will be left to Josh and probably his group to help us break that down. But initially, just to attach the importance this report is, and for us to be able to start to jump on it later in the year, I think we should look for some money and bring in some solicitors to break this down for us. Thank you.
CAO?
Yes, I just wanted to add that also we have recently been having some discussions in terms of where Josh Bates physically sits in the organization to enable him to best support the Board of Police Commissioners. One of the items that we had talked about was having him within legal services, so he's closer in proximity to both the clerk's office, who is supporting these meetings and the motions and the records, and also easier access to the solicitor who's assigned to support the Board of Police Commissioners.
For those of you who have not been on the board when Commissioner Carol McDougall was with us, she was our member of the Canadian Association of Police Governance. We have Commissioner Akindoja now. And we had, as a municipality and as Board of Police Commission, been selected to host the 2024 conference. That was accompanied by a letter of support for financial support from the CEO of that time, Jacques Dubé. And we have a few things that we will need to start to work toward in relation to that. So the conference for 2023 is in Newfoundland. So there would be certainly expectation of this board, and we would be sending at least one representative. But if you recall, when I went to the last one, I thought would be much more helpful to have at least two, maybe however many more, given that it's in Newfoundland, it might be more palatable financially to do that. But the Carol reached out to us to just remind us of this, and there were some recommendations that she made, which I certainly respect and appreciate. That the 2023 conference in Newfoundland would be a place to would be expected that we would have a representative there to pitch the excitement of coming to 2024, coming to Halifax to participate in the next one. There is a breakfast that is held that is often hosted by the upcoming city. So we'd be looking for something there. We also, there's an opportunity to seek funds from Nova Scotia Association of Police to offset the sponsorship fee, which is $25,000 due in 2024 for our particular role that we're the sponsor for that conference for that year. And there is also an invoice that can be forwarded along to the folks at the executive director, Jennifer Malloy at the Canadian Association of Police Government, for sponsorship in the future. So there's a number of things that we need to do. And what might be is being suggested, and I certainly would encourage us to do this, is to appoint, at the very least, appoint a representative to go to that, to participate in the 2024 Planning Committee, because that's an opportunity for us to be part of it, so we know what we would be doing next year, and as well at the conference to bring greetings on behalf of the municipality for the future conference. And so I would like to suggest that we don't need to do it tonight, as we have more business to do tonight, but what I would like to suggest is that I'll send a bit of a poll around through email to see who might be interested in participating now in the early stages of the planning on our behalf, and then work with the CAPG folks, see what they do, what we need to do, and just keep this moving. The year's going to go by very, very quickly. The exciting part for us as well is that this particular conference is also in the year that the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police will also be in Halifax. I think it would be an awesome opportunity, maybe for some context and some exchangeable opportunities, interchangeable opportunities, bring some folks into the things we're doing. I don't know if they actually will run at the exact same time. Do you know, Chief, if they are? No, I don't either. The last one was in September. I don't know when this one would be. But at the same time, we've got an opportunity to have leaders in our city from both of those agents on a big conference level. I think we need to find ways to be part of it in both contexts. So I'll leave it there with you. Just want to bring that up to you for now. Obviously, if there are board decisions around if there's funding and disbursements and all that sort of thing, we'll deal with that later. But for now, that's the information report for that. So watch for an email to come from me on that. Okay, so items for future consideration. Are there any items? I don't think there are. Nothing from you, Madam Clerk? No?
No, Chair.
Okay. Anything from the commissioners? No. So now we will move into in-camera. Oh, where's notice? Yeah, we'll do notices of motion now. So then when we return, we just have to adjourn the main meeting. Any notices of motion from members? Nope. Seeing none, we consider that one done. And now we will move in camera. We need a motion, please. Yes. Commissioner Blackburn, thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Giles. And that in camera will be in the small room.
And I'd like to remind everyone that they should mute their mics before we move in camera, please.
To say.
All
Are you
right,
having fun
folks,
yet?
we're gonna wrap this meeting up. I know it's been a long one, but we're right on time. Just need a motion to adjourn. So moved. Commissioner Giles, seconded. I don't think you need a seconder, but Yemi. And thank you. We're right on time. That's a good chair, right? I'm not. I know.